You missed a spot, big guy. The words landed before the drink did. Cold soda splashing across Marcus Bennett's shaved head and sliding down the collar of his faded gray delivery shirt. The ice cubes clinking softly as they hit the polished hardwood floor of the crowded downtown bar. And for a moment the entire room seemed to pause, not completely silent, but quieter, like a theater audience leaning forward just before something unexpected happens. While Marcus stood still beneath the amber pendant lights, his shoulders broad, his frame heavy, the fluorescent glow from the beer signs reflecting off the damp fabric clinging to his chest, and the smell of citrus soda mixed with fried wings filled the air as a few people chuckled, unsure whether to laugh or look away. And Marcus slowly blinked, the liquid dripping past his eyebrows and down to the edge of his jaw. His delivery bag still slung over one shoulder, the insulated red fabric worn at the seams, a small patch stitched near the zipper where he'd repaired it himself just weeks ago, because replacing it meant skipping groceries, and he had already calculated every dollar for the week, every gallon of gas, every mile across the city's late-night streets. And across from him Ryan Coleman leaned back on his stool, one elbow resting on the polished bar top, his off-duty badge clipped casually to his belt catching the light like it belonged there, like it justified the smirk curling at the corner of his mouth, while his friends, two men in button-down shirts with loosened ties, shared quick glances and half-laughs, the kind that sounded unsure, like even they felt the moment stretching longer than expected. And Marcus shifted his weight slightly, the soles of his worn sneakers squeaking faintly against the floor as he reached up, not quickly, not dramatically, just steady, wiping a drop from his cheek with the back of his hand, his expression calm, almost distant, as though he'd learned long ago that reacting too fast only gave moments like this more power. And somewhere behind him a glass clinked. A bartender paused mid-pour, the golden foam rising slowly over the rim, while the neon sign near the entrance buzzed faintly, its blue glow flickering against the rain-speckled windows. And Marcus glanced down briefly at the damp front of his shirt, the logo of the delivery company partially blurred now. The fabric darkened in uneven patches, and he inhaled quietly, the smell of soda and cold air settling into the space between breaths, then lifted his eyes again, not with anger, not with challenge, just steady, grounded, the kind of look that seemed to absorb the room rather than push against it. And Ryan's smirk twitched slightly, barely noticeable, as if the stillness had taken him by surprise, as if he expected something louder, sharper, but instead there was only Marcus standing beneath. The warm light, water dripping softly from the edge of his sleeve, the clock above the bar ticking faintly toward midnight, and the quiet stretched just long enough for everyone to feel it, like 10 seconds suddenly felt longer than they should, like something unseen had shifted in the air. And Marcus slowly reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded napkin he'd saved from earlier, the paper soft and creased, and began to wipe the moisture from his hands with deliberate calm, the movement unhurried, measured, and the room watched, not because anything dramatic had happened, but because nothing had, and that stillness, quiet, controlled, and unexpected, hung in the air heavier than the drink that had just been thrown. Marcus Bennett folded the damp napkin once, then again, pressing it carefully against the edge of the bar, as if he were trying to restore something small and invisible, while the faint hum of the overhead lights blended with the distant sound of rain tapping against the tall glass windows facing 4th Street. And for a moment he adjusted the strap of his insulated delivery bag, the weight shifting slightly against his shoulder, the zipper brushing softly against the worn fabric of his jacket. And a notification vibrated faintly from his phone tucked inside the side pocket, a soft buzz that only he seemed to notice, because he had learned to recognize that sound instantly. The rhythm of another order, another address, another late night across the city that stretched nearly 12 miles from one end to the other, and he reached down slowly, pulling the phone out just enough to glance at the screen, the glow reflecting faintly in his eyes, the words, "Order pickup ready," blinking beneath a countdown timer already ticking down from 8 minutes. And he exhaled quietly, not frustrated, not hurried, just aware, because every minute mattered when you were paid per delivery, and every mile meant another calculation in the back of his mind, another gallon of gas measured against rent due in 4 days. And behind him someone shifted in their seat, the bar stool legs scraping softly against the floor, while Ryan Coleman picked up his glass again, now half empty, the condensation leaving a faint ring on the polished wood surface, and Marcus slipped his phone back into the pocket, his movements steady, practiced, like someone who had repeated this routine hundreds of times, and he reached for the small stack of napkins near the counter, pulling two more and gently dabbing the remaining moisture from his sleeve, careful not to drip onto the delivery bag, because keeping the bag dry meant keeping the next customer satisfied, and satisfied customers meant better ratings, and better ratings meant more orders, and more orders meant staying ahead of the numbers that quietly followed him everywhere. And the bartender finally set the half-poured beer down, glancing briefly toward Marcus before sliding a fresh stack of napkins across the counter without saying anything, and Marcus gave a small nod, subtle but sincere, while the faint smell of grilled onions drifted from the kitchen in the back, mixing with the cool air from the vent overhead, and he shifted his stance again, the fatigue from a 14-hour day settling into his legs, the kind of heaviness that made every step feel slightly slower but never stopped him, because stopping was not part of the plan he had built for himself. And the neon clock above the bar ticked forward another minute, its red digits glowing softly, and Marcus reached for the edge of his delivery bag, smoothing the fabric with his palm as if preparing for the next move. And somewhere near the entrance the door opened briefly, a gust of damp night air slipping inside, carrying the distant sound of traffic and the faint echo of a passing siren. And Marcus glanced toward the door, measuring the distance, the timing, the next step in his mind, while the quiet in the room lingered, not tense anymore, but still watchful, as though everyone sensed that the moment had not fully ended yet. And Marcus adjusted his shoulders once more, steady and composed, ready to continue his night the same way he always did, 1 mile, 1 order, 1 quiet step at a time. Ryan Coleman lifted his glass again, swirling the remaining ice slowly as he watched Marcus Bennett prepare to leave, the faint clinking sound cutting through the low murmur of the bar, and his eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with a quiet irritation that the moment had not unfolded the way he expected, because Marcus had not argued, had not raised his voice, had not reacted in a way that made the room turn against him, and instead the silence had shifted something subtle in the air, something Ryan could feel even if he did not fully understand it. While one of his friends leaned closer and muttered something under his breath, the words too low for anyone else to catch, and Ryan gave a small dismissive chuckle, setting the glass down with a soft tap against the wood, his badge catching the warm light again as he leaned forward, elbows resting casually on the counter, as if reclaiming the space, as if reminding everyone nearby who he was without saying it out loud. And Marcus adjusted the strap of his delivery bag once more, his phone vibrating again in his pocket, the timer now likely down to 6 minutes, and he turned slightly toward the bartender, placing 2 crumpled bills on the counter for the soda he had ordered earlier, even though most of it had ended up on his shirt, and the bartender hesitated, glancing at the damp fabric and then at Ryan, before quietly sliding the money back toward Marcus, shaking his head gently, and Marcus paused, then nodded. Once in appreciation, his expression still calm, still measured, and he reached for the handle of the delivery bag, lifting it carefully to keep it balanced, the insulated lining rustling faintly, while the overhead light reflected off the polished floor beneath him, still dotted with faint traces of melting ice that had not yet been fully wiped away, and Ryan shifted on his stool again, watching Marcus step away from the bar, the heavy footsteps soft but steady, the kind that came from someone used to long hours and longer nights. And the door at the far end of the room opened again as another customer stepped inside, bringing with them the smell of rain and cold pavement, the wind briefly brushing against Marcus's damp sleeve, and he moved toward the exit without hurry, his shoulders relaxed despite the fatigue visible in the slow rhythm of his movement, and Ryan's eyes followed him, lingering longer than expected, as if something about Marcus's quiet composure unsettled him in a way he could not explain, while the neon sign buzzed softly overhead, and the clock above the bar ticked forward another minute, and Marcus reached the door, pushing it open with one hand, the cool night air spilling inside, carrying the distant hum of traffic and the glow of streetlights, reflecting off wet asphalt. And for a moment he paused at the threshold, adjusting the strap once more before stepping out into the night, the door swinging gently behind him, and Ryan leaned back again, lifting his glass. But his smirk had faded slightly, replaced by a faint crease between his brows, as though the quiet departure had left something unresolved hanging in the room, something that had not yet fully revealed itself. While outside, Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk, the rain now reduced to a light mist, the street stretching ahead under rows of amber lights. And he pulled his phone out again, checking the address for the next delivery, the map showing a route just under 3 miles away, and he began walking toward his parked car, his pace steady, unaware that the moment inside the bar had already started to ripple beyond the quiet he had left behind. Marcus Bennett unlocked his car with a soft click, the headlights flashing briefly across the wet pavement as he opened the driver's side door, the faint smell of cardboard boxes and thermal bags greeting him as he placed his delivery pack carefully onto the passenger seat, making sure the zipper was fully sealed before he slid behind the wheel, the seat creaking slightly under his weight as he reached forward and adjusted the heater dial, warm air slowly pushing against the cool dampness, clinging to his shirt, while outside the mist drifted under the streetlights like thin smoke. The city quieter now as midnight edged closer, and Marcus pulled his phone from the mount clipped near the dashboard, tapping the navigation icon with steady fingers, the route appearing in soft blue lines stretching just under 3 miles through downtown streets and onto a quieter residential road. And he started the engine, the low hum filling the small sedan, the dashboard lights glowing faintly against the worn steering wheel that showed years of use, while he eased out of the parking spot, checking both mirrors carefully before merging onto the street, the tires rolling softly over damp asphalt. And behind him the bar's neon sign flickered through the rearview mirror for a moment before disappearing as he turned onto Pine Avenue, the traffic light ahead glowing red, and he slowed to a stop, his fingers resting loosely on the wheel, the heater now warming the cabin slowly, easing the chill from his sleeves, while another notification buzzed faintly, a reminder that the order pickup window had narrowed to 4 minutes, and Marcus nodded slightly to himself, calculating the timing, knowing he could still make it if the next 2 lights cooperated, and the signal turned green, and he accelerated gently, the city unfolding ahead in quiet stretches of wet pavement reflecting amber lights. While inside the bar, Ryan Coleman leaned back again, but his attention kept drifting toward the door Marcus had exited, the low conversations around him resuming but not fully returning to their earlier ease, and one of Ryan's friends cleared his throat, glancing toward the bartender who now wiped the counter slowly, while another patron near the end of the bar lifted his phone, scrolling briefly before pausing, his eyes flicking toward Ryan and then back to the screen, and Ryan shifted slightly, the badge at his belt brushing against the stool as he reached for his drink again, though the earlier confidence in his posture had softened, the quiet after Marcus's departure lingering in a way he could not shake. While outside, Marcus turned onto Maple Street, the storefronts now mostly dark, the occasional convenience store glowing softly in the distance, and he checked the address again, confirming the pickup location 2 blocks ahead, his movements calm, routine, the rhythm of the night settling back into something familiar, while the wipers moved once across the windshield, clearing a thin layer of mist, and Marcus exhaled slowly, the warmth inside the car beginning to dry the damp fabric at his shoulders, and he pulled into the small parking lot of the late-night diner where the order waited, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzing faintly as he parked, reaching for the delivery bag once more, preparing to step back into the night, unaware that inside the bar behind him, the quiet ripple left by his calm departure had not yet finished spreading, and that the moment he walked away had already begun to change more than just the atmosphere of a single room. Marcus Bennett stepped out of his car and pulled the delivery bag from the passenger seat, the cool night air brushing against his still slightly damp shirt as he walked toward the glowing entrance of the late-night diner, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly above the glass door, and inside the warm scent of grilled bacon and fresh coffee wrapped around him as he pushed the door open, the bell above chiming lightly, while a young cashier behind the counter looked up and gave a small nod of recognition, because Marcus had been here many times before, sometimes twice in a single night, and he approached the pickup counter quietly, adjusting the strap of his bag as the cashier slid a brown paper bag toward him, the receipt stapled neatly to the top, and Marcus checked the name carefully, his finger tracing the printed address to confirm every detail, because one mistake meant a delayed delivery, and a delayed delivery meant a lower rating, and every rating mattered more than most. People realized, while the cook behind the counter placed a sealed drink carrier beside the bag, and Marcus lifted both items carefully, setting them into the insulated compartment with practiced precision, making sure the containers stayed upright, his movements steady and unhurried, while a television mounted in the corner of the diner played muted late-night news, the scrolling text at the bottom of the screen moving slowly, casting a flickering blue glow across the chrome surfaces, and Marcus zipped the bag closed, nodding quietly in thanks before turning toward the door again, the bell chiming softly as he stepped back into the misty night, the pavement reflecting the diner lights like rippling gold, and he walked back to his car, placing the bag carefully onto the passenger seat once more, securing it with the seat belt the way he always did, a small habit he picked up after one sharp turn months ago. And he slid into the driver's seat, glancing at the navigation again, the route now showing 2.7 miles through a quieter residential area, and he started the engine, easing out of the parking lot. While inside the bar, Ryan Coleman shifted again on his stool, his fingers tapping lightly against the glass as the earlier conversation around him resumed in fragments. Though his attention drifted toward a phone placed on the counter by a nearby patron, the faint glow illuminating a paused video, and the man hesitated before tapping play, the sound low but enough for a few nearby heads to turn slightly, while Ryan frowned faintly, not fully focused yet, as he lifted his drink again. The ice now melted into a thin layer of water, and outside Marcus drove steadily through the quiet streets, the houses ahead lined with porch lights glowing softly. The rain now reduced to barely visible mist under the street lamps, and he turned onto Cedar Lane, the navigation voice guiding him calmly, his hands steady on the wheel as he followed the route, the heater now drying the last traces of dampness from his sleeves, and he slowed as he approached the destination, the house number illuminated near the curb, and he parked carefully, reaching for the delivery bag again, stepping out into the calm night, unaware that back inside the bar the faint glow of a phone screen had begun to draw more attention, and the quiet ripple from earlier was beginning to move in a direction no one inside had fully expected. Marcus Bennett stepped onto the narrow walkway leading to the front porch, the wooden boards slightly damp beneath his sneakers as the soft glow of a porch light illuminated the house number beside the door, and he balanced the insulated delivery bag carefully against his hip before reaching forward and pressing the doorbell, the chime echoing faintly inside the quiet home. While he adjusted his grip on the handle and glanced briefly down at the receipt, confirming the name once more, his breath forming a faint mist in the cool night air, and after a few seconds the door opened slowly, revealing an elderly woman wrapped in a light gray sweater, her silver hair pulled back loosely, her expression warm but tired, and she looked at Marcus with gentle surprise, her eyes flicking briefly to the delivery bag and then back to his face, and Marcus gave a small nod, carefully lifting the bag and opening the zipper, the warmth from the containers escaping into the cool air as he handed her the neatly packed order, his movements steady and respectful, and the woman accepted the bag with both hands, pausing as she noticed the faint dampness still clinging to Marcus's shirt, her brows knitting slightly in quiet concern. But Marcus simply offered a calm smile, stepping back half a pace to give her space, while the porch light cast a soft glow across the scene, highlighting the quiet exchange, and she thanked him softly, her voice gentle, and Marcus nodded again before turning back toward his car, the night calm and still around him, the distant sound of a passing car, barely audible beyond the quiet neighborhood, and he walked down the short path, pulling his phone from his pocket to mark the delivery complete, the screen glowing faintly as he tapped the confirmation, another soft vibration signaling the next available order already appearing, and he exhaled slowly, slipping the phone back into place as he opened the driver's side door, the interior still warm from the heater, and he sat down carefully, adjusting the strap of the now empty delivery bag, while across town inside the bar the faint glow of the phone screen drew more attention, the muted video now playing quietly, showing a short clip recorded just minutes earlier, the angle slightly shaky, but clear enough to capture the moment Marcus stood under the amber lights, calm and composed, while a drink spilled across his shoulders and the patrons nearby leaned slightly closer, the low murmur returning as the bartender paused again, his cloth resting motionless against the counter, and Ryan Coleman glanced sideways, his expression tightening faintly as he recognized the scene, the subtle shift in posture around him becoming more noticeable. While outside, Marcus started the engine again, the dashboard lights glowing softly as he checked the next address, the route appearing 4.2 miles away toward the east side, and he eased the car into reverse, pulling away from the quiet curb, unaware that the calm delivery he had just completed stood in quiet contrast to the growing attention back at the bar, where the ripple from earlier had begun to spread further, carried by a small glowing screen and the silence of a moment that refused to disappear. Ryan Coleman leaned slightly toward the glowing phone screen, the dim light reflecting across the polished bar top as the short clip replayed again, the shaky footage capturing Marcus Bennett standing beneath the warm amber lights, calm and composed, while the soda dripped slowly from his shirt, and the silence in the video seemed even louder than the quiet inside the bar itself, because Marcus had not reacted, had not argued, had not done anything that matched the tension of the moment, and the patrons around the phone shifted subtly, their expressions changing from curiosity to something more thoughtful, while the bartender stopped wiping the counter again, his eyes lingering on the screen before flicking briefly toward Ryan, and Ryan straightened slightly, his fingers tightening around the glass as he realized more than just a few people had begun to watch, the low murmur returning in soft fragments, and one of the men near the end of the counter tilted the phone toward another customer, who leaned in, his brows furrowing as he watched the clip, the glow from the screen casting faint shadows across their faces, and Ryan cleared his throat quietly, lifting his drink, though he did not take a sip, the earlier confidence in his posture now replaced with a subtle tension that settled into his shoulders, while outside Marcus Bennett drove steadily through the east side streets, the houses spaced farther apart now, the glow of streetlights stretching in long reflections across the damp pavement, and he followed the navigation voice guiding him toward a small apartment complex just over 4 miles away, his hands resting calmly on the wheel, the quiet rhythm of the night settling around him again, while inside the bar. The clip replayed once more, and someone lowered the volume slightly, though the visual alone carried enough weight. Marcus standing quietly while the drink spilled, his expression steady, his posture calm, and Ryan shifted again, glancing briefly toward the door as if measuring the distance between himself and the moment that had already passed, while a woman seated 2 stools away folded her arms lightly, her eyes moving from the phone to Ryan and then back again, and the bartender finally set his cloth aside, the faint hum of the overhead lights filling the quiet space, while outside Marcus slowed his car as he approached the apartment complex entrance. The gate opened, the parking lot illuminated by tall white lamps casting cool light across the rows of parked vehicles, and he turned in carefully, scanning the building numbers as he followed the map, his movements steady and practiced, while inside the bar the phone screen dimmed briefly before lighting up again. The clip now paused on Marcus standing under the lights, and Ryan exhaled slowly, his gaze dropping to the counter. The ice in his glass now melted completely, and the room remained quiet, not tense, not confrontational, but thoughtful, as though the calm composure Marcus carried had settled into the space he left behind, while outside Marcus parked near Building C, reaching for the delivery bag once more, stepping out into the cool air, unaware that the quiet moment inside the bar had begun to shift the way people saw what had happened, and that the ripple from earlier had not faded, but instead continued moving quietly forward. Marcus Bennett stepped out of his car in the softly lit parking lot of Building C, the overhead lights casting long pale reflections across the damp pavement as he reached for the insulated delivery bag, lifting it carefully against his side before checking the building numbers once more, the faint hum of distant highway traffic drifting through the cool night air, and he walked toward the stairwell, his footsteps steady and unhurried, the quiet of the late hours settling around the apartment complex, while a porch light flickered faintly above the second-floor landing, and he climbed the stairs with measured steps, adjusting the strap of the bag as he reached apartment 214, confirming the address on his phone before gently knocking, the sound soft but clear against the stillness, and inside he heard light footsteps approaching, followed by the door opening slowly to reveal a young father holding a small child wrapped in a blanket, the warm light from inside spilling across Marcus's shoulders, and Marcus offered a calm nod. Opening the bag and carefully handing over the neatly packed order, the father smiling with quiet gratitude, his eyes tired but warm, and the child resting quietly against his shoulder, and Marcus stepped back respectfully as the man thanked him, his voice low to avoid waking the child, and Marcus nodded again before turning back toward the stairwell, his movements calm, his pace steady as he descended the stairs and stepped once more into the cool night air, while across town inside the bar the phone screen continued to glow softly, now passed from one patron to another, the short clip replaying silently as more people leaned in to watch, the moment captured from earlier seeming to grow heavier each time it played. Marcus standing quietly, composed beneath the warm lights, the contrast between calm and expectation settling deeper into the room, and Ryan Coleman shifted again on his stool, his gaze lowering briefly before flicking toward the screen once more, the subtle tension now visible in the way he adjusted his posture, his fingers resting against the rim of the empty glass, while the bartender quietly refilled a water glass. Nearby, the clink of ice sounding louder than usual in the thoughtful quiet, and outside Marcus reached his car, placing the now empty delivery bag onto the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel, the dashboard lights illuminating his calm expression as he pulled out his phone, marking the delivery complete, another notification appearing almost instantly. The next order located 3.8 miles away toward the south end, and he started the engine again, the heater pushing warm air into the cabin as he eased out of the parking lot, the tires rolling softly across the wet pavement, while inside the bar the phone screen dimmed and then brightened again. The clip paused on Marcus standing still, and a few patrons exchanged quiet glances, the earlier laughter now replaced by a reflective silence, and Ryan exhaled slowly, the weight of the quiet settling around him as the ripple from earlier continued to spread, while outside Marcus drove calmly through the sleeping streets, the glow of streetlights stretching ahead, unaware that the calm dignity he carried had begun to reshape the moment he left behind, and that the quiet ripple inside the bar was still moving forward, steady and undeniable. Marcus Bennett drove through the quiet South End streets, the soft glow of streetlights stretching across the wet pavement as the city settled deeper into the early morning hours, and the heater inside his car hummed gently, drying the last traces of moisture from his sleeves while the navigation guided him toward another pickup location just under 4 miles away, and he adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, his movements calm and deliberate, the rhythm of the night returning to something familiar, while across town the bar remained quieter than before, the earlier energy replaced by a thoughtful stillness that lingered between conversations, and the phone that had passed from hand to hand now rested near the center of the counter, the paused frame still showing Marcus standing beneath the warm lights, calm and composed, and Ryan Coleman stared at the screen for a long moment, the reflection of the image faintly visible in the polished wood beneath his glass, and he shifted slightly, the badge at his belt catching the light again, though now it seemed less like a symbol of authority and more like a quiet reminder of responsibility, while the bartender moved slowly behind the counter, refilling water glasses and wiping the surface with steady motions, the sound of the cloth sliding across the wood soft but noticeable, and one of the patrons finally set the phone face down, the glow disappearing, though the silence remained, and Ryan exhaled quietly, his shoulders lowering slightly as he reached for his glass, now empty, and set it aside without taking another drink, while outside Marcus turned into another small strip mall parking lot, the storefront lights dim but still glowing, and he parked near the pickup entrance, reaching for his delivery bag once more, stepping out into the cool air with the same calm composure he had carried all night, his footsteps steady as he walked toward the door, the bell chiming softly as he entered, and inside the bar Ryan remained seated for another moment, his gaze drifting toward the door Marcus had exited earlier, the memory of the quiet dignity still lingering in the room, and he slowly stood, placing a few bills on the counter, nodding briefly to the bartender, his movements quieter now, less confident, but more measured, and he stepped toward the exit, the door opening to the cool night air, the distant sound of traffic and the glow of streetlights greeting him, and he paused for a moment outside, looking down the street as if replaying the earlier moment in his mind, while across town Marcus accepted another order, carefully placing it into the insulated bag, checking the receipt with the same steady attention, and he stepped back outside. The early morning air calm and still, and he returned to his car, starting the engine as the first faint hint of dawn began to soften the horizon, and the city remained quiet, the streets nearly empty, while Ryan walked slowly down the sidewalk, the night air cool against his face, the earlier laughter now replaced by reflection, and he stopped briefly beneath a streetlight, the glow casting a soft circle around him, and he stood there for a moment before continuing forward, the quiet stretching ahead, and across town Marcus drove steadily into the early morning, his calm presence unchanged, the gentle hum of the engine blending with the stillness of the city, and the night closed not with noise or confrontation, but with a quiet understanding that lingered in the spaces both men left behind, the ripple from a single moment settling into silence as the first light of morning approached.